It's 11:30 in the morning on an absolutely beautiful sunny autumn day. It's about 9 degrees at the moment. And if I look at the batteries, you can see that it's on 15%. It actually stops when it gets to 10% because that's the lower limit of the battery. So just 15% battery at 11:30 in the morning. It's not actually too bad. We've had some really, really cold days recently where the battery is depleted completely before it's even light enough to let the chickens out of the run. So it's not too bad. But in my previous video, when I did an update, I was talking about summer, and summer was absolutely fantastic. We generated so much and we exported so much to the grid that we made quite a tidy profit. So I think it's time for another update. This time we're going to talk about October and November, so autumn months. And now the cold has set in and now the radiators are all full electric radiators. Now they've turned on. Let's have a little look at the figures. Okay, so a little bit of a system recap then. We've got a 13.5 kilowatt array on the roof, and that's an east-west facing array. And we've got 20 kilowatt hours of battery storage on the side of the house, and that's an Alpha ESS system, and the batteries and inverters are joined in parallel. Now, the disadvantage with having an east-west array is because it's not south-facing, it means that you're getting less sunlight, especially as we have quite a shallow roof pitch. And we've got trees on either side as well. So I knew it wasn't going to be great, but I suppose it's a little bit worse than I was expecting. But luckily, of course, we've got the batteries as well. So when the solar isn't performing brilliantly, at least we've got 20 kilowatt hours of battery storage. That means that we can power the house from the battery for a while anyway. And that's powering the house at 7 pence per kilowatt hour because you charge the batteries at the cheap rate at night for 7 pence per kilowatt hour, and then you use it during the day, and that's called load shifting. But I'm going to get into all of that later. I'm obviously going to dig into lots of data, but if you just wanted to skip ahead and get to the part where I say, this system was installed by Heatable, they've been fantastic, here's my code if you want £75 off a battery install, £150 off a solar array, click the link below. Feel free to just skip ahead to that bit, because firstly, Heatable have been great, but also this system, just in general, has been amazing. It's got to be the best thing I've ever got, apart from the electric car maybe, but energy bills are not going to go down anytime soon. In fact, there was a really good interview with Greg Jackson. He's the CEO of Octopus Energy. He was talking to Martin Lewis on his show. He said that
there are so many fixed costs in the system now and planned that even if the wholesale price of electricity falls to zero, bills probably wouldn't come down.
Wow.
So if you want to protect yourself from the volatility of the energy market in the UK, then it does make massive sense getting solar panels and a battery. But I don't want to do a hard sell or anything. Just watch the video and have a look at my figures and just get some quotes. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, if you like this sort of content. And let's dig into the figures after the Spinny Mystery V logo. It's lovely light in the conservatory for filming, but absolutely freezing because I'm certainly not going to turn on this radiator because it costs a fortune. In fact, just in November, that's how much energy we've used, 77 kilowatt hours. It's the equivalent of £20.70 if we were actually paying that at peak rate. But of course we're not, because we've got the battery and we've got the solar panels. Since the system was installed in April, I've done a few update videos. So I'm just going to put the totals up on screen here, just so you can see how much we've used and how much we've got from exporting back to the grid and the profit we've made from each month. Now, October, we haven't made a profit, sadly, so we used £166 2 pence of energy, and we made £36 2 pence from exporting. So that's overall £129.98 we've spent in October. November was £268.54 we've used, and an export revenue of £16.77. So overall, that's £251.77 we've spent. And just to say that export revenue is when we're feeding back to the grid, both from the battery and from excess solar, which doesn't happen very much this time of year, really, because really most of the solar is going into the house or it's being put into the battery, and it doesn't generally go back to the grid very often. Right, let's do a comparison with last year then. Now the bills got a little bit mucked up by Octopus, so it's a bit difficult for me to compare October, also because we moved in October the 8th last year, so it wouldn't be a full month anyway. So let's just look at November. In November 2024, we spent £512.35 in electricity. That's 1,917.88 kilowatt hours. November 2025, we used £268.54 worth of electricity. But we did actually export a little bit, so that then gets reduced to £251.77. That was our bill for November. So why was the price so much more last year? I've got a few theories. Firstly, we didn't have Intelligent Octopus Go in November last year. We switched to that. So that means you get 1 hour less cheap rate at night. And also the cheap rate at night is 7 pence for Intelligent Octopus Go. We were on Octopus Go, which was 8.1 pence per kilowatt hour for the cheap rate. But of course, the main reason is that we now have 20 kilowatt hours worth of batteries on the side of the house that we charge fully at the cheap rate and then we discharge during the day. So our energy use isn't actually very different, but we're using the energy stored at the cheap rate. Hooray for batteries. And that's called load shifting. So if we look at the Alpha app, we can see how much the house has consumed. And in October, it was 1,268 kilowatt hours. In November, it was 1,565 kilowatt hours. However, the Alpha app doesn't actually know about the car charge point. So when we charge the car, that's not logged on the Alpha app. So really, we've used far more energy than the Alpha app thinks we have. So what we have to do is look at the MyEnergi app to see what the car charger is doing. If I go onto the MyEnergi app, then we can go to charge history and we can go to last month. So last month was November. And you can see that that says that we charged up 313.5 kilowatt hours in November. So the charge history for October was 239.6 kilowatt hours. You'll see that we charged less in October than we did November. We do the same amount of miles, but of course it starts getting colder, so it means that we're charging the car a little bit more often. So if we add the Zappi and Alpha figures together, hopefully this is what we've actually used. In October, 1,507 kilowatt hours, and in November, 1,878 kilowatt hours. That's just 39 kilowatt hours less this year than last. So we've used roughly the same amount of energy, really, which surprises me a bit because we've put in more efficient windows, both double glazing and triple glazing in different areas, and we've also put in cavity wall insulation. So I would have expected us to use quite a bit less energy, but I don't know what the weather was like last year, and I've tried to look into that, but I couldn't really work it out. So it could be that that's affected things, it could be that we've ended up charging the car more, I don't know. But obviously the radiators are the main use of energy. So let's look at the stats for that, which I can do with the Rointe app, and I can find out that in November 2024, we used 1,051 kilowatt hours, which was £187.65 in November. And this year, 925 kilowatt hours, which is saying £235.66. So we've used less energy this year, but it's cost us more. The Rointe app doesn't actually know that we're using the solar power. It doesn't know that we're using a battery. So it's just basing those figures on the tariff that I've put in there. And actually, I forgot to change the tariff when we changed to Intelligent Octopus Go. So take those pound figures with a pinch of salt. But yes, you can clearly see from there that we've used less energy this year. And why is that? Well, it is hopefully partly because of the cavity wall insulation and the better windows. We did a house update video. Watch that if you want to see the installation of those. We've set the temperature a little bit lower throughout the house. So the radiators are now on 18.5 degrees instead of about 20, I think it was set to last year. And we're probably heating the conservatory less because I did keep going on about that to Flaviana, and I said, look, we've really got to stop that. Looking at the Rointe app for November 2025, you can see a graph that shows the temperature set and the registered temperature. And I think, I'm not definite, but I think that means that the house temperature is higher than the one set. So perhaps that means that the insulation is doing a good job of keeping the heat. I don't know. But if you compare it to November 2024, you can see there's far less variation between the set and registered temperature, which is quite interesting, isn't it? So I don't know why that is exactly, and maybe you can tell me in the comments if you know, but I think I'm right. I think that that's just a case of, it means that we've set the temperature lower, but it's keeping the heat better, I think. Also, maybe the temperature was warmer this year, although I doubt it, because to be honest, it's felt very, very cold throughout November. So yes, we've used less energy, but the Rointe app thinks it's cost us more. So I have changed the tariff finally now, but unfortunately that doesn't change all of the historical data. So all of that is completely out anyway. The energy use is correct, but yes, the pounds are not. The app is a little bit annoying in that you can't change the price for the tariff on a half-hour basis. And Intelligent Octopus Go starts the cheap rate at 11:30 at night and ends 5:30 in the morning. But I can't do that in the Rointe app, which is a bit annoying. I'm a little bit OCD in some respects, and that kind of drives me crazy. So much of the time when we're using the radiators, it's actually costing us 7 pence per kilowatt hour and not the peak rate at 29.63 pence per kilowatt hour. And that is because we are generally using what's in the battery. And of course, on a sunny day like this, and we are using the power of the sun to warm the house, which is great. Not very much, but a little bit. By the way, I don't want to diss Rointe because actually their customer service has been excellent. The towel rail we've got in the bathroom, that had an issue. It was leaking whatever, and they've replaced it. So despite the fact that we didn't have a receipt, it's been there for several years. The previous occupant bought them and they've replaced it free of charge. So that's really, really good. We're doing the ensuite up at the moment, or we're making an ensuite in one of the rooms. So the replacement unit we're going to put in there, and we bought another unit which has Wi-Fi access, which means that we can finally find out how much we're using for the towel rail, because previously we didn't. So when I talk about the electricity use, I can tell you on the Rointe app how much we're using for all of the normal radiators, but the towel rail is actually excluded from that. Okay, blimey. This is going to be quite a long video, isn't it? Sorry. So let's look at the Alpha app and get some more juicy information. And firstly, we'll talk about the batteries. If you've seen my previous video, you'll know that I've had some issue with Alpha in terms of their reporting. The Alpha app seems to think that we've made a profit of well over £2,000, and we just haven't. It would be lovely if it was true, but it's not. Now, I'm not going to go into this all again. It's a quirk, I think, of the parallel system that we've got, and it's not reporting correctly, but watch some previous video about that. Just to say, Alpha still insists it's correct. I still insist it's not. And I'm not sure it's ever going to get resolved, to be honest, but anyway. Hopefully I'll dig into that in another episode. It wasn't until the 10th of October that we actually started running out of battery. And that was because there was very little solar and the radiators must have started coming on. And there was not much export from the battery either throughout October. Now, something quite interesting about these Alpha batteries is that they don't have battery heaters in them, which means that in cold weather, they get affected by the cold temperature. In fact, it actually says in the literature that it might not even either charge or discharge at under 0 degrees, so under freezing, then it wouldn't do anything. But we haven't found that because we have had some days of -2. I think that's probably as low as it got. And it seems to have been working fine. I can't see any issue. So that's interesting. It is on the side of the house, which is perhaps a little bit protected maybe. But I did think I was going to have to start boxing it up to keep it a little bit warmer. But I haven't done that yet, but I might do. But we'll see. Once we get into the depths of winter, then it'll obviously start getting a bit colder. And we'll see if the batteries really do get affected by that, because one of the decisions I was making when planning this system is I was thinking, do I put it in the garage where it's warmer? And then I just thought, no, it's a bit neater, I think, to put it on the outside and keep the garage kind of free. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Now, the new Alpha batteries, just announced a couple of days ago, actually, they do have battery heaters in them. So that's much better for storing outside. They're also much safer. They've got sort of fire protection, which is quite interesting. So let's talk about load shifting. As I said, load shifting is when you're using the energy that's been stored in the battery, and that might be stored at 7 pence per kilowatt hour if it's been charged at night, or it might even be the solar, which is, I don't want to say free, because it isn't, because you've paid for the solar panels, but it's effectively free, I suppose. If the solar panels are an investment, then you could kind of say it's free. So in October, we used 672.6 kilowatt hours from the battery. In November, that was 584.9 kilowatt hours. So if you times both of those values by 29.63 pence, that's the peak rate, then you come to £199.29 in October, £173.30 in November. So that's how much we would have spent if we were using peak electricity. So we used £372.59 worth of electricity from the battery, but 575 kilowatt hours were charged from the grid at 7 pence per kilowatt hour. So that's £40.25 worth of electricity. And 690 kilowatt hours, amazingly, were charged from the solar. So we actually saved £332.34. That is, of course, assuming the cost of solar to be zero. You can argue about that in the comments. As I said, we're south-facing, but really you don't get very much sun because it's behind the trees. And, you know, as it goes like that, it hits the trees here and then it hits the trees there. So we get very, very little evening sun hitting the solar panels. I have trimmed the cherry tree a little bit with my new lopper, which I love. I'll put a link in the description if you wanted to get it yourself. It's a brilliant thing. Spear & Jackson is the make. Pull down a bit of string and then that does the cutting. And it's absolutely brilliant. It's quite addictive. So let me extend this. Okay, this is the choppy bit here. You go right up to these tall branches, and then you just go like that, and then it knocks you in the face. The best day for generation so far, since we've had the system, was the 16th of May. We generated 70.7 kilowatt hours, which I find mind-blowing. And I think about it this way. The eNero that we've got has a 64 kilowatt hour battery in it. And the eNero does about 300 miles in summer. So to think that we've generated more than that, we've generated more, well over 300 miles worth of electricity just from the solar panels in one day, which I just find, I mean, that's just amazing, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? So June was the best month that we've had. We had an average of 52.73 kilowatt hours generated each day and a total of 1,581.9 kilowatt hours generated. Anyway, that's summer. Let's go back to the autumnal months. We generated 458.3 kilowatt hours in October and 254.9 kilowatt hours in November. The best day in October for solar was 6th of October. We generated 27.5 kilowatt hours. In November, that was 16 kilowatt hours on the 2nd of November. I still find that a pretty amazing amount of energy generated in one day, but anyway, it's obviously far less impressive than summer was, but that was to be expected. So if you consider that the solar is always during the day when electricity is expensive, it's pretty easy to work out, thankfully, how much that saved us. So in October, that's saved us £135.79, and in November, we've saved £75.53. So just from the solar, that's how much we've saved. Again, just pretty amazing. I'm always going to get comments on the video saying, well, yes, well, the system had a cost to it and therefore solar isn't free, is it? And of course, that's right. However, I just think of it as an investment. And we've put this money into the house and it's paying us back. Paying us back really better than a lot of savings accounts certainly would. And it's like if you get a new kitchen, which costs a fortune, probably as much as a solar and battery, you don't think about how much that's generating, do you? You don't think how much that's adding necessarily onto the house. You get it because you want it and because it makes you happy. And that's, I think, the same sort of thing really with the solar and batteries. Now, something else I wanted to mention is October had a couple of days of free electricity with Octopus, because when you get a really, really windy day, they've got far too much electricity in the grid that they need to get rid of. So what happens is sometimes you can be lucky and they'll actually give you free electricity. And this is all connected really to wind turbines and curtailment, it's called. They have to pay the energy companies that operate these wind turbines, they have to pay them to turn off the wind turbines, which is a ridiculous situation. And it's just because we can't store enough of that electricity. So what they do is instead they let us have it for free, which is nice. So on 29th of October, we made £2.71. On the 30th of October, £5.71. And you can see that's actually quite high, and that's because I was charging the battery and I was also charging the cars as well. So Intelligent Octopus Go means that if you plug that in, even if it doesn't charge the car, then you do actually get credit for the time that your car is plugged in. Worth saying, it's only free electricity on top of what you would already use. It's not everything is for free, by the way. So yeah, it's a good time to start cleaning your oven with a pyro feature, or heat your water cylinder or whatever else. Just do whatever you can to use up all of that lovely free wind power. So anyway, so that's great. Oh, by the way, you use my Octopus link if you want to swap to Octopus, and we both get £50. So thank you very much if you do that. Okay, so what improvements could we make? I think we're doing quite well, really. Obviously, the big thing would be getting a heat pump, which is something that I would love to get next year, but that is obviously quite a big chunk of cash. The government has something called the bus grant. That's the boiler upgrade scheme. And now they've added air-to-air heat pumps into that. If you want more information about that, by the way, look at Tim and Kat's channel. So it's great that the air conditioning is now included in the grant, but we still don't really know what route we'll go. If we get a heat pump, we might do the air-to-air heat pump like we had in our previous house. This up here is one of the air conditioning units, and we've got 4 of these in the house. We've got 1 in each bedroom and 1 in the lounge area here, which my wife didn't really like that much, but that was really due to the positioning of the units more than anything else. Or we'll get a air-to-water system, a traditional heat pump, which would involve ripping out all of these radiators and putting in piping. So that's going to be quite a big chunk of work. So I don't know what we'll do, but it makes sense getting a heat pump because they are so much more efficient than these electric radiators, and it would save us a lot more money. So we might do that. So hopefully we'll do that next year. But I did ask Heatable, how much would it cost just to double the battery capacity? So if we went from 20 kilowatt hours to 40 kilowatt hours. And they came back with a price of £8,000, just under £8,000. I'm not spending £8,000 on an extra 20 kilowatt hours of battery storage. That wouldn't make any sense at all. £8,000 would be far better spent on a heat pump. To be honest, we could probably get a heat pump installed for £8,000 because you get £7,500 off with the government grant. So yeah, that wouldn't make any sense at all. But it's interesting. Well, it's interesting to see really just how expensive that is. But that's because much of the cost is the installation cost. And even though I wouldn't have thought it'd be that difficult to put it on our existing system, that's what it costs to get people out and installing it. So it's far more cost effective to get the battery storage done at the same time as a solar installation, because you've already got the people here and they can, do it all at the same time. But clearly, just to come out and expand the storage in that way, it's not very cost effective at all. So if I were to shop around for a battery system again, maybe I would look at something that's a bit more plug and play, so I could actually do it myself. Because I just feel that you should just be able to get a battery and just go, yep, and put it on top. That would be nice, wouldn't it? And I think some systems you can do that, but you can't with the Alpha system that we've got. Something else that we could do as an improvement would be to get a bigger water cylinder, because at the moment we top up the water cylinder at the cheap rate. But then during the day, if we run out of water, which would happen if we have 2 slightly long showers, then we then have to top up the water cylinder, which uses, I think is about 3 kilowatt hours for the hour boost that we do. So obviously having a bigger water cylinder would have more hot water for longer, and we wouldn't have to do the boost in the middle of the day, which generally we don't do much, only if we're entertaining, which we have done a little bit more in November. But I think we'll certainly get a bigger water cylinder if we get a heat pump. So let's just recap it all then. Based on November 2024, having the solar and battery installed has effectively halved our bill. And this is due to a number of factors, I think. The double and triple glazing that we've put on, possibly the cavity wall insulation, possibly setting the radiator temperature lower. But I think the main thing really is the solar and battery installation. I think I'll leave it there. That's a lot of facts and figures I've just bombarded you with. I don't normally go into this much detail actually, but I know a lot of you probably appreciate this sort of level of detail. So it'd be interesting to see as we go further into winter how it continues to perform, but I am still absolutely thrilled with this system. I absolutely love it. And as I said in the intro, just look into getting solar panels and battery if you can yourself, because it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And it is addictive, and it's wonderful looking at all these figures and just seeing how much we're saving and how much we'll continue to save. And when you consider that energy bills probably will go up in the future, we'll continue to save even more when that happens. If you want a quote for battery and solar, then go to Heatable, use the links below, and use the code Mr. EV 150 for £150 off solar install, and Mr. EV 75 for £75 off a battery install. Okay, thank you very much. I think I'll leave it there. I need a throat sweet because I've been talking far too much. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please press the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of other videos. And I'll be back very soon. Bye for now.